Good morning, everyone. It's Wednesday, September 2nd, 2009. I wanted to give you an update on what didn't happen with Jimena and what actually did occur over the last 24 hours that made the storm take a less than favorable trajectory, not throw a swell that we had hoped for. Also have a little bit of stuff coming from the northern hemisphere, a little bit of northwest, not a whole heck of a lot, a little bit of stuff possibly from the southern hemisphere, but overall the Pacific is looking actually pretty quiet for the long range with not a whole lot of significant swell on the horizon. In either case, this is what's going on right now. Taking a look back at models a few days ago, we can see two different scenarios that were projected at the time on the weather models on the course that Jimena could take. One would result in some swell for Southern California, one and not at all. This was the worst case scenario, and it was showing that the ridge of high pressure that was pushing from the east and troughing that was pushing down from the northwest would guide Jimena on a course more or less towards the inland trajectory, keeping swell away from us, keeping that fetch moving into the Sea of Cortez. That was kind of the worst case scenario, and so models were thinking that we might get swell of this, we might not. Take a look, though, at the UK Met models. It showed a difference. Here's a view of that other model, complete in disagreement, showing that the ridge of high pressure would have extended more toward the west. Troughing wouldn't have had such an influence on it. This was considered more of a western outlier, showing that it would have had more of an influence to a best case scenario, but not all models were in agreement with this. But a lot of uncertainty does reside when we're talking about these type of cutoff lows. Hurricanes, as everybody knows, can jostle all over the place. Well, now that Jimena actually has developed and has come across the Baja area, we do know exactly what has happened over the last 12 to 24 hours. Take a look at this morning's satellite picture. We can see Jimena still somewhat of a defined storm. It's crossed over the Baja Peninsula, but it is heading into the Sea of Cortez, and it hasn't taken that favorable of a trajectory. If we take a look at the historic course and trajectory, we take a look here at the University of Hawaii pic, we can see that in red, that's Jimena's course when it had the strongest winds, about 135 knots, was traveling north, but Baja blocking a lot of that energy coming our way. That's because that course did take the less than favorable trajectory and crossed over into the Sea of Cortez. We can see an actual better view of this looking at this morning's weather models. This is this morning's relative vorticity model showing Jimena definitely right across Baja. We can see the troughing is still pushing very far to the south. Low pressure up to the north in the Gulf of Alaska. I'll get to that in just a moment, explain how that's going to be bringing some surf to Southern California, but not a whole heck of a lot. Spinning the models forward in time, we can see how Jimena takes that course, not favorable, crossing over Baja, going into the Sea of Cortez, and just really not anywhere near the Pacific waters to kick up any more fetch that possibly could have thrown swell our way. Take a look at the WAMs. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we can see where Jimena is definitely off on a more easterly trajectory, not located ideally for Southern California. This is a look at about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon for Southern California. If we take a look at this morning's model, which had been initialized for an estimate of 4 o'clock this morning, we can see Jimena going right into the Sea of Cortez. That's the fetch from. Now, we know the center of the system went into Baja, the low passed over it, but it went into the Sea of Cortez. Spinning the models more forward in time, we can see once again just a dissipating system. Not really a whole heck of a lot going on. Damaging winds and all that, but as far as surf making and fetch, we're just not seeing it on the WAMs. Taking a look up in the Gulf of Alaska, that low that I mentioned on the weather models, you can see it's starting to form a fetch. That holds some sign of promise that we could be seeing some of that swell from that in Southern California. It does look like in 48 hours out that would be growing more in size, but it looks like it'll probably stay far up north in the Gulf. Taking a look a little farther out, though, we can see that this would be more towards the weekend. We'd be seeing some wind swell forming along the coast, and that'd be from a lot of that troughing that's pushing down from the south right now and causing some winds along the coast. And that Gulf system gaining a little bit of strength, but looks like it is going to stay far to the north. That might bring us to something around the 7th. Taking now a quick look down to the southern hemisphere, there's a small little system swirling around French Polynesia. That should be bringing us a little bit of something on the 9th, but really not a whole lot. A lot of energy around New Zealand over in the Tasman Sea and down below it, but we're really not seeing anything that would be favorable for Southern California. Spinning the models forward in time, though, we can see something that may be a small ray of hope. This is 24 hours out. Small little system that breaks off that little area of stormy activity, but doesn't look like it's going to really be moving far to the north, staying still around Antarctica, and that wouldn't be throwing a lot of swell our way. Possible swell of this around the 13th, but not holding a lot of hope for this small little fetch. So that's it in a nutshell. Sorry to say, Jimena just hasn't worked out in our favor, so I'm really not expecting much out of this system at all. Looks like we'll be seeing a little bit of wind swell over the weekend, but small still overall. A little bit of northwest from that Gulf system around the 7th, but still that right now is looking to stay too far to the north, so we're not expecting a whole lot out of that either. Looks like we'll be seeing a little bit of something out of that French poly system on the 9th, but that's also looking like a bring your biggest board to the beach day. That's not looking to be anything sizable, only a 20-foot fetch down there out of that French poly system. A lot of activity around the Tasman Sea, not favorable for us from that area. We'll probably see little bursts here and there, but nothing excited. It looks like we'll be seeing something around the 13th, possibly from that system that would be forming then underneath of New Zealand, but that still is not looking that favorable for Southern California, so sorry to say it doesn't look like we may see anything sizable for quite a while. I'll stay on top of it, though, and keep you posted. You can always check out my wet sand report. That's posted 3 days a week over on wetsand.com. Just check out Southern California report on wetsand.com. And, of course, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, you can always check out my free site, wavecast.com. And if you want to stay up-to-date on what's breaking in Southern California, you can always check out my Twitter reports at twitter.com/wavecast. So until next time, be safe and smile in the lineup.